Hey guys, this is National Master Kevin Yang back at it with another video. This time we will be talking about really the essence of the game. So here's our game against a fellow chess club member, right? So against the fellow chess club member, I'll be playing white. Our chess club member will be playing black. And I'm just going to go over the game and see how we can improve, right? So I played knight c3. Knight c3, not doing much, but just developing a piece, right? e5, knight f3, knight c6, all standard. Now I play d4. And now this is sort of interesting, right? Because if black plays d6, I take, 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 and I can choose to trade my queens, right? Another alternative is black takes, knight takes, and black develops the knight out. This is about equal, so it's cool. And our opponent played, or a chess club member played f6. And the thing with f6 is that, sure, right, you protect this pawn, right, and you sort of reinforce this sort of structure, but you take away the square for your knight. And now this knight is going to feel a little bit lonely, right? So for example, we played d5, knight e7, let's say, e4, d6, and these two knights look, they don't want to be there, right? So I would say this f6 move is a little bit of an inaccuracy because this knight won't come out, right? So I'd like to recommend either black takes here, or whether black can play d6 like I highlighted earlier with pawn up, take, take, trade everything, and trade. So the goal is get the pawn up, get the king over, get the bishop out, get the rook out, keep the pawn there, get the other bishop out, get the knight out. Something like that, right? Even though there's so many arrows, just try to get your king to c7, get your bishops out on normal squares, get your knight out, and have a good game. So, okay. So let's see what happened in the game, right? d4, f6, and I played e4. Now, black takes the pawn. And the thing with this is that now, right, if we compare after knight takes d4, if we compare to this position, knight f6, it's going to be equal because black is allowed to develop. But let's look here. The knight develops here, and it's a little bit worse because, the knight has to come out, the bishop has to come out, there's extra moves, right? So you sort of have to get two moves to get your knight out. Meanwhile, the bishop is blocked for one turn and can't really get out, so that's really the benefit of keeping this square open. So by occupying a pawn on this square, black will not be able to develop as usual, right? So notice that I am just developing my bishop, I get the knight out, and I play f4. And my idea of playing f4 is really just to put some pressure, just in case if I get my queen here, get my pawn up, something like that might be deadly. So I'm just taking the steps to get there, right? So bishop d6 happens. And here's the thing, is that white has multiple alternatives. he can think about defending this pawn, or he can think about going for the king. So for example, let's take the computer's suggestion knight f5, which is really good, right? Bishop f8, queen d5, threatening that mate on f7. Now black has to give up a piece because there's no other way to defend this square. Take, knight takes, bishop b3, c6, right? Even though white didn't get to deliver mate, black lost a piece, and that's very important when it comes to material, when it comes to the endgame, right? So notice that, black's setup is very cramped, and white is sort of has all the space in the world to do whatever. And I played knight c2. Obviously that's a mistake, but what I tried to demonstrate is that there are multiple ways of playing this position, right? It's not just you protecting the pawn. Sometimes you have to go out and attack these pawns, right? You start recognizing after mastering the game that really it's not all about defending your pawns. It's not all about the material. Sometimes it's about who gets to the king first, right? Who kicks his butt harder. And that is what I want to say. Not everything is about material. When you get higher up the ranks, you'll see that more and more players will be willing to sacrifice a material, will be able to throw their pieces into the attack. They won't be afraid. But the lower rateds, it's all about not making mistakes and basically knowing that you're doing the right things. Right? So the difference between knight f5 and knight e2 is the difference between a player who knows we can sacrifice this pawn, it's not important, versus a player who's like, no, I have to defend the pawn because the pawn is important, and if I lose the pawn, and if I trade it all off, I'm going to lose the game, right? So there's a level of differentiation between the two players. So, okay. Bishop d6 happens, knight c2, and then bishop c5. Now realize that, the bishop came to d6 and then came to c5, right? And so as I like to say is that try to not move your pieces more than once in the opening. You want to develop all of them before moving one piece an additional time, right? And so I come in with knight f5. However, the computer finds a brilliant move, right? Let's look at this. I didn't even see this move. d5. Purpose of d5? Bishop takes d5. Bishop takes f5. E takes f5. Knight g7. Now what this does is after bishop e6, right? King takes, queen takes, king takes, rook check, king e1, knight b4. Going for the fork, bishop b3 goes back, knight takes f5. And now black is in dominant control. I didn't see this, of course. It's a computer move, but we all learn from these kind of things, right? You would never expect that d5 is the move, right? Let's look at this. Queen takes d5, queen takes d5, bishop takes d5, bishop takes f5, takes, knight g7, bishop e4, castles, right? So let's think about it this way. White has 7 pawns, right? An extra pawn of black's, but realize it's one of these pawns. And it's not as significant as if, let's say, the pawn were here, right? If the pawn were here, then it would be more significant. It would be a bigger advantage. But because the pawns are doubled, the engine is saying their white has less than a pawn's worth of advantage. And so basically, what this tells us is that this move really went a long way. So just wanted to point that out. So instead, our chess club member plays knight d4. And first, I was a little bit shocked at this, but I assumed it was sort of a mouse slip on his part because he sort of understood that, after knight takes, he's going to lose the piece and it's not going to look great. But instead, I played c3. And I wanted to see how he was going to react. And obviously, it's not a good move because you can take, and knight back, right? No biggie. So I was hoping he would play knight takes e2. And here was the moment to shine, right? At first I thought, you know what, I have to take back. I have to take back one of the ways because losing this knight is important. But then I thought about it another way. I thought, there is more important things in the world. I have to go for the king. And that's exactly what I did. Queen d5. Going for the f7 square. c6, and checkmate. So in this game we learned a few things. We learned that f6 really just made the development process slower, right? It blocked the bishop. If we look at this, right, you had to take 2 moves to get there, right? And so white is naturally putting pressure. So we also learned, from my point of view, that knight f5 and going straight for the attack is more important, right? We learned the difference between a person who does not fear material versus a person who does, right? Who takes this sort of losing a piece quite seriously. But then we also learned that the initiative is quite important. Getting to the king is more important than, let's say, losing a knight, right? So if whoever gets to the king first is going to win. And so I want you to take away with that, in addition to learning that, sometimes slowing up your development is going to get you punished. And so I hope you really enjoyed this video and hope to see you in the future as well. Thank you.